We gotta draw ourselves an Umbris. Freehand this up. Boom. Oh yeah, that's a good looking Umbris right there. He's got like some hand action going on. Ooh, look at this. I'm an MS Paint master. Ooh, he's giving you the bird or something. Oh yeah. This is really just a work of art here. And there's like a tree over here. I'm not good at drawing trees though, so I'm gonna draw a little flower. Like night and day. Just fantastic. I love it. Well, hello again. I am back with another Walter Makes a Deck video, and for this one, I saw this new spoiler from Crimson Vow, the set that's not quite out yet at the making of this, called Umbris Fear Manifest. I have him pulled up right now. This guy is really cool. Basically, he's a 5-mana 1/1 that gets bigger for every card your opponents have an exile, and then whenever he or another Nightmare or Horror ETBs, people mill until they hit a land and then exile all those cards. So he's this commander that, due to the nature of how the game works, is just going to get bigger the longer it goes on. With the exception of like 3 cards, I think, that exist in all of Magic, there's very few ways to return cards from exile to your deck. So, you know, in the same way that like Prosh or whatever, Sky Raider character is going to get more and more kobolds every time you cast him. Every time you cast this guy, he's just going to be bigger and bigger. And honestly, like, as soon as you hit a critical mass, like, it doesn't matter if his power is 40 or like 80, right? Like, it'll be enough. So we get to play Dimir, which is a color I rarely play. We get to play with mill effects, and then exile effects, which are things Dimir likes to do. And then also we get Nightmare and Horror Tribal. I've been thinking about this guy for a while, so I've actually gone out and like collected a bunch of like Nightmares and Horrors because I really wanted to make this deck, but I figured I would record my process again because I got some response from the last video that was Grist the Hunger Tide, and I think people enjoyed it, so I figured I'd do it again. This one should be a little more streamlined though, now that I know what I'm doing. But yeah, so we've got Umbris Fear Manifest. So the first thing we're going to do, of course, is head over to Archidekt, and we're going to start populating this deck list. I don't know if Umbris is in here. Oh, nice, he is. Cool. Boom. 99 to go. We're done. We also need to get our land base in there, so we'll just do it now. Like I said in the other video, what I like to do is just throw 37 generic lands in there, just so I kind of have an idea of how many other cards we need to build towards. But yeah, now we can't really use EDH rec because I don't think there are any lists for this. There might be like a handful. Yeah, so we're gonna have to do all the legwork on this ourselves, which is gonna be a lot of fun. So the first thing we're seeing is Nightmare and Horror enter the battlefield, or he enters the battlefield. So we're going to be revolving around an enter the battlefield type deck. So we're going to go ahead and throw in the staple Panharmonicon, because it's going to double our enter the battlefield triggers. We could also put in the Lithoform engine, which does something similar, though you have to activate it. Yeah, so we have to tap this and pay 2, so we wouldn't get it as consistently. Panharmonicon is definitely like the daddy, like it's like the big one that we want here, and Lithoform Engine is kind of like a lesser one. We can come back to it. We can add it for now, but it's most likely going to wind up in our maybe board, so I'll just go ahead and like put it there now because I don't think it'll make the cut. And yeah, the next thing is Nightmare and Horror. So we're going to look for commander. It's going to be blue and black. Type is going to be Nightmare. And yeah, let's see what we get. 41 cards. I'm going to sort these guys by CMC, or mana value as they call it now. This way, the ones that are all the way down here are very high CMC, and they might not be going in. But yeah, so this is just a vanilla 1-mana 1/1. I want to stay away from all kind of like the vanilla ones, because in the Grist video, what we found is that I came up with like 80 creatures and had to cut way down. So I'm just going to put in the good creatures to start, and then if we need more, we can always go back. This is a 2-mana 1/1 that exiles a card from an opponent's hand, and when this dies, they get it back. but it does exile a card, so I think this guy will be one of the first ones we add. So Mesmeric Fiend. Commander creatures have Menace and Death Touch. This is sweet. Our commander is going to be swinging, and to give him Menace is going to be very nice, or as we call it, Menace. So, Shadowcat Familiar, this definitely fits in there. It's also like a weird underplayed card. And as we've learned from the previous video, I like playing with weird underplayed cards. A Nightmare Pangolin, if only did something. 3 mana 2/2, exile 2 cards from a graveyard. More exile. Although we're not going to have a ton of stuff in our graveyard, we'll put this guy in there for now, but he might get trimmed as we move on. Ooh, as long as you control an Ashiok Planeswalker. Yes, I believe, let's go ahead and add these now. I believe that most of these Ashioks exile stuff. Exile each graveyard, yep. That's kind of Ashiok's jam. Let's see what the next one does. Make a Nightmare. We don't even need to read anymore. What? Exile cards from library. Yeah, cool. So we're gonna run all the Ashioks. So I think we'll run what was this card we just found? Swimmer in Nightmares. Not only is it the tribe we want, it combos with the Ashiok Planeswalker to give it more power, and then it can't be blocked, which is cool. Dread Presence has landfall triggers, which involve drawing a card, so this is a very good Nightmare. This is probably going to be like one of those 85% synergy cards when people start throwing deck lists out there. Faceless Butcher. Now, this is something that I noticed when I started building this, is something people online pointed out. Faceless Butcher, there is a combo that exists with our commander. Basically, Faceless Butcher exiles a creature when it comes into play, and then that creature comes back when Faceless Butcher leaves. So if you have Faceless Butcher and Wormfang Drake, you can have your commander, Faceless Butcher, Wormfang Drake, and then if you play a clone copying one of them, you can do like an infinite loop of flickering and exile everyone's graveyards. We're not going to run the Wormfang Drake, but Faceless Butcher is still like a good card to include, so we'll go ahead and throw him in there. Untitled Awake, this is a mill card, but I believe when you cast it from your graveyard, it comes in as a Nightmare. So this is effectively a 5 mana 1/1 Nightmare with Skulk that we can cast out of our graveyard, which is not terrible. It also mills our opponent 13, and we're going to be running a lot of graveyard exile and mill, because Dimir does mill very well, and the graveyard exile is going to make Umbris shoot way up. So we're definitely going to throw in Startled Awake. Doom Whisperer, this card is busted. I was just talking with someone the other day about how good Doom Whisperer is. To put it in context, Grizzlebrand is 8 mana, is banned, and he says pay 7 life, draw 7 cards. If you pay 8 life with Doom Whisperer, you surveil 8, which is effectively the same as drawing the cards, except instead of going in your hand, you can make them all go into your graveyard. But if you're running a majority of decks that have black and commander, having cards in your graveyard is almost equivalent to having them in your hand. So whereas Grizzlebrand also had the life link to get that life back, Doom Whisperer does not, which definitely puts it in the lower tier category. And of course, drawing the cards is better than putting them in your graveyard. But Doom Whisperer is still fantastic. And I think the internet's finally started to notice because he's creeping back up. He was like a $2 rare for months and months and months. Target player loses 3 life. Not really what we're going for. We got our boy Umbris. Remove all cards in your hand from the game. I don't think we want to do that. Dream Eater. So we talked about it. Has Surveil, and it bounces something to our opponent's hands. That's playable. Is it called Dreamweaver? Dream Eater. My mistake. It's because it's so early. It's before noon, which is early for me, because I am a lazy person. Loquacious Champion. This card sees a lot of play in cubes, as I understand it. But it's a 6 mana 6/3 that can regenerate. Yeah, and it's a Torment card. I think this is really just Torment Tribal, as we run every card we can. It just has this old border and looks sweet. Mind Leecher. This is a newer Nightmare, and this card is very good for us. When we mutate it, we exile the top card of each opponent's library, and we can play those cards. And of course, it's a Nightmare. So this is a hard include for us. We of course have Nightmare, the original Nightmare. This card is not particularly good, but I think we're gonna have to run it because it is a Nightmare. I think, you know, in a legal sense, I am obligated to put this card in the deck. As we have established, I don't make good decks. I like Wormfang Manta. I have it in another list that I used to run where I had Torpor Orb, so it would come into play. You wouldn't skip your next turn, and then when it left play, you would just get an extra turn. Torpor Orb, though, shuts down our entire deck, so we're not going to run Wormfang Manta because we need our ETBs. The last one here that's worth considering is Hypnox. He is a 11 mana 8/8. It's not great, if we're being completely honest, but it's a sweet looking Torment card. It's like the most powerful Nightmare, mana wise and like power and toughness wise, aside from our commander in the game. It's very memey. When it comes into play, you remove all cards from an opponent's hand, but when he leaves play, they get him back. If you hard cast this on someone, it's pretty rude, because it only triggers on cast. But yeah, we're gonna put in the Hypnox. There's no way around it. I gotta get my boy in there. So look at this. With us running basically only stuff we wanted to run, we're at 13, and we still have horrors to go through, as well as other cards that aren't these types that are gonna synergize well with us. So let's quickly hit up horrors and see what we got here. Hostile Horror is a new land. You sack a creature, put a counter on it. So basically, if you've sacked 3 creatures, you can transform it, and it becomes a horror construct. So since it transforms, it does not enter the battlefield again, and we don't get that trigger. It can phase itself out, but that does not trigger enter the battlefield. Phasing a creature out just makes it not exist for a period of time, and then later it returns, but it has been in play the entire time for the purpose of entering the battlefield. So this guy, despite being a cool card, being a horror, being a pun, which we love, does not actually work with our deck. It's a 2 mana 3/3, can't be blocked. Here's our Hunted Horror. This definitely comes in. This is a 2 mana 7/7. So let's add that. Phyrexian Revoker is great. We get to run basically these sideboard modern cards. And you know what? We can just name our opponent's commander with these. With these cards. Name an on-land card. Activated abilities of the chosen name can't be activated. So if they have, you know, some commander that has an activate on it, you just name it. They can't use it until they kill it, which they definitely will want to. But it doesn't matter because he's just there to mill stuff. Spellskite is nice. It can redirect stuff to it, protect your other creatures. If someone's running like a Zada Hedron Grinder deck, you can redirect all of the effects to Spellskite. In most decks, you wouldn't be running Spellskite, but it is a horror, so we will run it. Thing in the Ice is also a horror that then transforms and bounces all non-horror creatures. What? We have to, what's that called? Thing in the Ice? Yeah, now we're really just playing a modern deck, as we have 3 modern cards in it so far. These are like fine cards. This card I saw when I was throwing things together the other day. Wharf Infiltrator. It's a 2 mana 1/1. Can't be blocked very easily. When it deals damage to a player, you draw a discard, and if you do that, you can pay 2 mana to make a horror. So it's going to get us extra enter the battlefield effects for our commander, getting us some more mill, more exile, yada yada yada, doing the whole thing. This is a 2 mana 1/1, enters the battlefield. Each opponent exiles a card, and they don't get it back. So yes, please. If the entire deck could be Yarok's Fenlurkers, we would be in a good spot. This is a 3 mana 2/2 that gets better when people discard. We're not really running discard themed. Chasm Skulker. A lot of these newer horrors slap, man. Chasm Skulker is a fantastic card in Commander. It's also one of these cycle of cards that was created by the community. So if you look in the bottom there, it actually has a person's name that submitted this card as a design, which is pretty cool. Now we're into these areas which are bad. This turns into a Leech Horror, but I don't believe it enters the battlefield, so we won't get those triggers. Eternal Scourge can be cast from exile, and when it becomes the target of a spell or ability, it's exiled. So this card is pretty sweet. It'll get us extra enter the battlefield effects. It's also yet another modern card. So even though typically horrors and nightmares are pretty crappy, we're running all of the expensive ones. Yep, we already looked at these guys. Whenever a creature you call becomes blocked, you can return it to your hand. If that is all this card said, we would still run it. Grazalaz Ithlid Scholar. Easy include for us. Easy include. I just noticed I have... This is my World of Warcraft overlay. Let me turn that off. Those are the amount of pulls we have on a boss that we should not have that many pulls on. Anyway, moving on. We can cast it out of here by exiling creature cards, which is fine, and it gives us more enter the battlefields. I think we put Scab in for now, but he is, again, one that's kind of on the precipice of the chopping block. So this guy is Transfigure, so you can sack it and search your library for a creature with the same CMC and put it into play. This is great. We just need to have another creature that has a CMC of 4, which is the Faceless Butcher as well as some other stuff. So, Flesh Writher. It's also, this art is fantastic. Like, come on, how could you not be in love with this? 4 mana 3/3 with Skulk. You can discard your hand to draw that many cards at the start of your turn. Not bad. It also is a horror, so it's checking all those boxes. Hell's Caretaker. Sack a creature. Return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Yep, that's pretty awesome for us. That is gonna let us cycle through our creatures, get more enter the battlefields. Icarid, this card is played in, I think, Legacy. You cast it out of your graveyard. It's a very complicated, very wordy card. It does let us get it out of the graveyard, but we have to get specifically black creatures. Yeah, I think we run Icarid. It's getting us extra into the battlefields. Now, the sad part is, I think the old border version of Icarid is quite expensive, so we might have to go with like a newer version of him. But we'll see. Oh no, he's like $1. He's fine. He'll stay then, as long as we can continue running old border stuff. Exile a card from our graveyard. Each player discards their hand. Yikes. We'll also be exiling those graveyards. So, yeah. This guy, though, is pricey. He's like $10. Yep. 4 mana 3/3 Flash Flying Exploit. When he exploits a creature, counter a spell. Heck yes. So now, our horrors also... We have a counterspell horror. Phyrexian Obliterator. This guy is one of my, like, favorite old-timey cards. I don't know why. Whenever it's dealt damage, whoever dealt damage to it has to sacrifice that many permanents. It's pretty savage. 4 mana 3/3 flying, but if you have Threshold, it's a 4/4, and you can tap it to destroy a blue creature. It's also from Torment, so I feel like it goes without saying. We'll be running this card. This deck is not fantastic. Ravenous Chupacabra. There's a surprising amount of these that are playable. We will certainly be having to do some trims here. Sewer Nemesis. This is gonna like instantly die as soon as we exile graveyards, so probably not. Consuming Aberration. This is another one that's gonna die as soon as we exile all graveyards, but whenever you cast a spell, they mill, so it's kind of like a little yin and yang. It can just die out of the blue if we exile all graveyards, but we do get to control those effects. And his effect is so powerful that I think I would run this card and like over Sewer Nemesis, because this is milling everyone, where Sewer Nemesis is just milling a certain person. Nemesis of Reason. When they attack, they mill 10. I also already have a Nemesis of Reason, so it's cheaper. Really was excited to see Doomweaver, and then was really bummed at what it did, as it does nothing on theme with the commander that is a horror commander that it is literally being printed alongside of. It's great support for other decks, just not for this one. I mean, I say that, but we could pair it with our commander. And when they kill it, we would like draw 30 cards. Okay, we'll put it in Doomweaver. Because our commander's going to be really thick. So we can totally run it. Ooh, Chittering Host. I think when they... I don't know what happens. Graph Rats. Exile them, then meld them into it. So I think when things meld, they enter the battlefield. Let's find out. When things meld, do they ETB? Ask a magic judge. Boop. Yes. Alright, so now we need Graph Rats and Midnight Scavengers. And Graph Rats. This will definitely get cut. I don't think it's good enough. Let me just close this real quick. Oh, this is just my token enemy list for whenever I play Commander, just so I always remember who I'm attacking first. We could run Keurig. This is a counterspell. Oh my god, the slug is a horror. Oh my god, we have to run the slug now. Okay, so we're gonna run the slug, the horror. This card has a lot of text and it's from a TV show I've never watched and is a secret layer card, so there's like 3 reasons why I don't want to run it. Yep, I think we're done there. They printed these Eldrazi cards in like the second time they returned to Zendikar, not the third time, and they have this quality called the Void, which says they don't have a color, but they had this mechanic of ingesting and processing. So like creatures would ingest exile cards off the top of their deck, and then other cards would process them, where you take your opponent's cards from exile and you put them in their graveyard, and then you get a bonus from it. We don't really care about putting those cards into their graveyard, but we do care about exiling the cards. So like for Fathom Feeder is 5 mana, draw a card, each opponent exiles a card off their library. This card is pretty fine in our list. It's also like repeatable. It also has, it's a little rattlesnake, it's got Death Touch, it's very innocuous, people probably won't waste removal on it. And there was another one, this card. This is the secret commander of our deck. So, Oblivion Sower says, when it enters the bat, when you cast it, target opponent exiles 4 cards from the deck, and then you can put any number of lands that they have in exile onto the battlefield under your control. This card is going to do a lot of work in our deck. In fact, I like it so much that I'm going to throw in an Eye of Ugin, which is a land that searches for Eldrazi, just so we can fetch it out, because that card is going to be very good. The other two are Cyrevic's Stagnation, which is whenever your opponent's landfall, they exile 2 cards from their deck. It's also just a wild card that never sees play, because it never really has a home, but it definitely has a home here. And then the big daddy himself, Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger. This guy exiles 2 things when he enters, and when he swings, they exile 20. One swing with this, and our commander is so strong for the rest of the game. So those are all those exile synergies that we were talking about. Now, the other half of this equation is going to be exiling people's graveyards. So we want the exile thing here. We also want to say graveyard. Let's see what we get here. There's a bajillion cards. Well, we'll add that Bajuka bug, but then we're going to refine our search a little bit, because there's no way I'm looking through that many cards for this. So we're going to type in Leyline of the Void. This is the perfect card for us. It exiles our opponent's graveyards, but not ours. We're going to want to find cards that do something like this. So, Soul Guide Lantern. Enters the battlefield, exile a card. Tap it. Exile each opponent's graveyard. Fantastic. Thank you, Soul Guide Lantern. And now this makes me think of the other staple ones that we know of, which are Nihil Spellbomb, which are these little 1-mana artifacts that you can tap to sacrifice people's graveyards. Relic of Progenitus. The beginning of, what's this? The beginning of each opponent's combat phase, they may exile a card from their graveyard. If they don't, they can't attack you. Oh my. If people don't have graveyards, they can't attack us. That card is good. Web of Inertia. Easy. What should we move on to next? So we've got our creatures. We've got exiling graveyards. We need to put cards in people's graveyards. So now we can't actually use this, because we're going to go look at our theme. We're going to find mill, and we're just going to pick like maybe the best And by best, I mean cards that mill the most at a single time. So we're going to pick like the best 5 or 6 of these cards. Oh, this is one of them. Tasha's Hideous Laughter. Each opponent exiles cards from their library until they're exiled 20 mana value or more. Easy include. Maddening Cacophony. Each opponent mills 8. That's fantastic. If you kick it, they instead mill half their library. What? What is this card? Yeah. I was thinking of running Traumatized, but like Maddening Cacophony is just way more aggressive. Holy crap. That's so aggressive. Yikes. Each opponent mills 14. Yikes. Whenever an opponent loses life, they mill that many cards. Yeah, I think we do Mind Crank. What was the other one we saw there? Fractured Sanity. These are just kind of like the big haymaker ones. Not enough to like mill an opponent out of the game, but when combined with our commander, enough to do some serious work. And then Mind Grind is great. Traumatize is great, but it's one person. I like the kind of global effect, because when someone gets knocked out of the game, those cards go away that are exiled and our commander shrinks. So we kind of just want everyone to deplete evenly. I don't think, I mean, I love me a Hedron Crab, but I don't know. I mean, we would run the Ruin Crab over the Hedron Crab. It's each opponent mills 3. Sure, we can do the Ruin Crab. You got to represent either a Hedron or a Ruin Crab, I feel, in this list. That puts us pretty good. That's given us, we got like 5 solid mill cards here. Good thing we clicked on utility artifacts. Altar of Dementia. This card is nutty. So you sack a creature and someone mills equal to that creature's power. So if our commander's like a 15/15 and we have something like Leyland of the Void, we can sack it, mill someone 15. The next time we cast it, it's base 30/30, plus they're going to have to exile again. So Altar of Dementia, I think, fits pretty famously in here. It also just allows us to sack our board in response to board wipes and things like that. Speaking of board wipes and things like that, I think we want to be running Damnation, but then also this is going to be a list where Toxic Deluge is going to do a lot of heavy lifting. We can pay like 8 and kill stuff, and it will not kill our creature. Our creature's just going to be bigger. Speaking of us having this ginormous creature, we need ways for that ginormous creature to get through. So the go-to is going to be Rogue's Passage. Not a super played card, but lets our target creature be unblocked. We can also do Whisper Silk Cloak, making it unblocked that way. We can also do Rite of Consumption, which is the black version of Fling. We just sack it and it does damage to target player. This card will probably get us some kills. Like just throwing our 20 power commander at someone. Or more if it's even bigger. So now the time has come to throw these guys into custom piles. We're going to make a new category here called Mill. We'll make a new category called GR Exile. This is where we're exiling people's yards. And then, yeah, we will take it from there. All right, so I got some piles made up. We have our mill pile, we have our graveyard exile pile, and then I have this pile that I called Getting In. Now, another thing we need to do is we need to throw in removal. And if we can make our removal something that also exiles, that's going to be great. The kind of like hallmark card of this is going to be Vraska's Contempt, which exiles a creature or planeswalker and you gain life. This is fantastic, and this language here is going to allow us to search for others that are going to do something similar. So let me get that in there. Ooh, Reality Shift. That's a good one. Basically just looking for those cards that you already see pop up in EDH that do stuff with exile. Flicker effect makes me now consider that we want to run a couple of clone effects, especially if we want to. So we want to run a couple of clone effects. and Spark Devil. And the other one is just cloned, but Phyrexian Metamorph is a good one because it can also become like a utility mana rock. And then the big one is Rite of Replication. So we can get multiple enter the battlefields on these creatures at once. Also, if we want to make copies of our commander to get even more chicanery, Helm of the Host is great for that. And then if we want to get a bunch of our creatures that have been killed coming back from the graveyard, we can run Patriarch's Bidding. We can also run Living End. Living End, or Death, I think is the 5-mana one, is going to be great in this deck because our opponents, again, aren't going to have graveyards. So it can be a very one-sided card for us, which is fine. I mean, we don't need to have a symmetrical effect here now. Even form, what a card. This flickers our creature and searches for a basic land card. We'll just nab that while we're here. Sword of Hearth and Home, and then also Sword of the Animist. I'll go ahead and just quickly throw in our token mana rocks here. Get those on the board. Got the Soul Ring. We got the Mirror Signet. We got Arcane Signet. Probably in this list we want to run like a Mind Stone. And maybe a Gilded Lotus. Just like some solid mana rocks. To keep on zooming here. Anthem Mutineer. It exiles an opponent's creature and they make a salamander. This is just fantastic removal. And we can flash it back. I'm on board. Deadly Relic, exile target creature. Yep. Phyrexian Scriptures exiles all graveyards. And destroys all creatures. So hard to agree on this one. Exile any number of target creatures. This is something that's going to flicker our things. And she's indestructible. Yeah, I think we probably throw Thassa Deep Dwelling in there just to have a little bit of flicker going on. Look at this, we're finding all of our flicker exile as well. Ooh, this guy is not a nightmare, but he does stuff with nightmares. Oh, Chainer, how did I forget about you? That now makes me realize that our search was a little off because we were only searching for those things that were specifically nightmares and horrors, and we missed a couple of things. So we need to look for stuff that has the keyword nightmare after this. We'll just here we go. Nightmare Shepherd. Yep. Whenever a non-token creature we control dies, we exile it and we make a token of it that's a nightmare. So whenever our stuff dies, we just replace it with a nightmare. This card is gonna be good. What's it called? Nightmare Shepherd. And we'll do the same thing real quick. Just replace this with horror. And yeah. Ooh. Put a horror, which is equal to the amount of creatures that died this turn. What a weird card. Ooh, Corpse Swift. We can make a horror every turn. I think. Profane Transfusion. What a meme card. I think we're running too much meme to justify it, though. Alright, I think Spoils and Corpse Swift go in. Another thing is that we can exile cards from people's hands. And there's these effects like Unmoored Ego. Choose a card name, search target opponent's graveyard, hand, and library for up to 4 cards with that name and exile them. A lot of these effects are just removing like 1 or 2 cards. Trying to think of a good way to phrase this. I think we want to say hand, exile, search. Yeah, these are like these extraction cards where you search for like a card in someone's hand, yeah, like Surgical Extraction or the Graveyard, and then you remove all copies of it. These are typically not good because in Commander they're only going to have 1 copy of a card. The exception to the rule is honestly the one I typed in, which is Unmoored Ego, where you can get 4 copies of any card. Most of them have to be non-basic lands, but Unmoored Ego, we can get like 4 basics out of someone's deck, and then later with our Oblivion Sower, we can put them into play. So I think we try to make it work. it will probably be the only deck on EDH Rec that is running Unmoored Ego as well, which would be funny. Another effect that's doing something similar is going to be Stolen Goods, which is exiling from the deck. So let's do Library and Until, maybe? 32 cards, that's not too many. Yeah, so this is exile until they hit something. And opponent, because a lot of these others are you target yourself. 8 cards, perfect. There's our Stolen Goods, there's the Tashas. Exile a creature and opponent controls, they reveal and put the rest on the bottom. Nope. Put the rest on the bottom. Nope. This is exile until they get a non-land card, and then you can cast it for free, and all those cards remain exiled. So Stolen Goods is literally the only other one we were missing. Oh, there's also a creature. Voidwalker? Yeah, there's also a creature that does the same thing as Leyline of the Void. Whenever a card would go into an opponent's graveyard, it's exiled instead. So this guy's just redundancy for that. All graveyard. Let's see if we're missing anything else there. Oh, yeah. Mnemonic Betrayal. Exile all cards from all opponents' graveyards. You can cast those this turn. Author of Shadows exiles all graveyards. Hedonist Trove is a single person's graveyard, so probably nope. Exile cards from each opponent's graveyards. Yeah, I think we would run these 3. So Mnemonic Betrayal, Author of Shadows, and Zot's Will. This is graveyard. Let's see if there's any one for creatures. Or what we say, permanent? Exile all permanents. So we've got these 3 to consider. Pyxis of Pandemonium. Each player exiles the top card of their library face down. Perilous Vault exiles everything. Exile tokens, that doesn't help us. This is exiling a single card, but it's a Planeswalker, so it's repeatable. I think Pyxis and Karn can go in. Pyxis of Pandemonium. Karn liberated. What else is there? I think, doesn't this new card, Sphere of Annihilation, exile it, all creatures with mana value less than amount of void counters on it. So this is a delayed board wipe that exiles everything. I don't know why our search didn't come up with that, but yes, we'll throw that in there as well. Alright, so now all we're missing is some ramp and some draw and making sure we have enough removal. So let me shuffle these into piles again and we will reassess where we're at. Another thought I had is because we're going to be having all these different lands from our secret commander, which is the Oblivion Sower, we can run cards with Domain, which is weird because we can run cards with Domain in a 2-color deck. So Domain says for each basic land type among lands you control, do something, and we can actually get some payoff from it. So the main card I was considering is this card. Collective Restraint. Creatures can't attack you unless they play X for each attacking creature, or X the amount of lands you control. So it would be 2 in our 2-color deck, right? But we're going to have Oblivion Sower, and if we like exile 3, if we get like 2 lands from a Naya player, then we have 4 different lands. So I don't know. It's very memey, and if nothing else, that's kind of our jam. So anyway, I've organized stuff into columns here. I've added a couple more ramp. I went ahead and looked up just some Dimir decks to see what other ramp they're running, because I'm just unfamiliar with these things, and I saw the Fell War Stone, which got me on this thing, so we're going to throw Fell War Stone in here as well, just kind of round out our ramp package. We've got our clone effects. I threw all the removal here. Collective Restraint is just a pretty meme card. And yeah, now we're going to have to do some pruning. So we're 149, so we're going to be pruning primarily probably about 30-ish creatures, and then a handful of other cards. In making decisions, we're going to be trying to remove stuff that, so we're going to sort by CMC. We're going to remove things with a higher CMC, things that have multiple pips of the same color. So for example here, I know we're going to remove this Fractured Sanity. It's triple blue. It's just a lot harder for us to cast, and it's just a weaker card than some of the other options. So we'll be removing that. So kind of making those sorts of decisions and seeing if there's anything that's like too high mana or just isn't quite good enough for our deck. So I'll go ahead and make those cuts and get back to you guys. All right, well, this one was one of the hardest cuts I've had to do before. There's a lot of stuff I cut that I wanted to keep, and also, as you see, I only got down to 110, which I think is where I'm going to leave it until I actually start getting the pieces together and playing it a few times. I'll really quickly just kind of go over what I did here. I cut a bunch of stuff that I didn't keep in the maybe board because it was just redundant or weaker than other things. I ended up cutting the Planar Void Relic Progenitus and other effects that exiled all graveyards and keeping the ones that only exiled my opponents. I realized that there's a lot of synergy with black with my own graveyard, and I want to have access to it. I imagine my opponents will try to mill my or exile my graveyard at times, but I also don't want to be doing it. Fathom Feeder I really like. It's still like I'm waffling on it, but I think that ultimately I need to keep my Nightmare and Horror count high, and this card is just weaker than Ruin Crab in terms of milling, which I also cut. But I still really like it. Realistically, should probably just be removed, and Ruin Crab should go back into the maybe board as an alternative. So let me just drag that guy over there. Forgotten Creation. The draw on it wasn't super good. I'm just actually going to eliminate it. I really like Phyrexian Obliterator. I have one. It's like a $20 card, but I already have it. The 4 black is just a lot. Possessed Haven I really like. It's just kind of too memey. Stolen Goods I think is just weaker in our deck than honestly playing a Nightmare or a Horror, because with our commander out, or even just playing our commander, we're exiling multiple people instead of just one person, and we don't really care about the free card here. We just cared about getting more cards. Chainer is really cool because it enables us to dump mana if we get our Urborg Cabal Coffers out, and just animate a bunch of stuff and get a lot of triggers. But if he dies, all nightmares are exiled, including our commander. So he's a little too weak. I cut the Patriarch's Bidding and kept the Living Death because our opponents ideally won't have graveyards, and we have a mix of nightmares, horrors, and other things. So the Patriarch's Bidding gets weaker. Hypnox is awesome. I just can't afford him. Like mana-wise, it's just too much. And same with Hullbreaker Horror. We just had too many things that were a high CMC. Other stuff I added was just like the staples, like Cyclonic Rift. I added all the standard card draw, Mystic Remora, Rhystic Study. I also added Kindred Discovery because we're doing a tribal-themed deck. I don't quite know what we pick here, and this card might get cut as we are balancing between nightmares and horrors, and these cards are less strong when you have 2 tribes you're trying to support. Also, Nightmare Shepherd is a demon, and it's exiling stuff of ours to make nightmares of it when they die. So this guy is also like on the chopping block. So like I said, we're left here with 110 cards. We'll probably accumulate some of these, play it a few times, see what works, see what doesn't work, and take it from there. Our curve looks pretty good. We had a huge glut of, there's like 30 or something 4 CMC cards, so we really had to trim those down to just kind of the bare bones things. But yeah, it looks really cool. I think the thing I'm most excited about is playing something like Unmoored Ego, searching out people's plains, mountains, or forests, and then playing Oblivion Sower to get control of those, and then playing Collective Restraint so our domain is higher than the amount of basic lands our deck is capable of producing on its own. It's not particularly good, but it's very funny. We also have a pretty strong pillow fort in Collective Restraint and Web of Inertia. If people don't have graveyards, we literally can't be attacked. So I think that'll prove to be pretty fun. We also get Pyxis of Pandemonium, which is going to be a hoot. Always just a laugh riot with that card. But yeah, overall, it looks like I think it'll be a pretty fun deck. I really would not want to play against this or other people's lists with like any other black deck because you're always using your graveyard. And I feel like a majority of builds for Umbris are going to involve eliminating your opponent's graveyards the entire time. So anyway, I'm curious to see what people do with this going forward. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoy the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.